Imagine living in a simulation and not knowing it. Imagine living in the Matrix, where humans are batteries powering a simulation based on 21st century America, and everything is induced by electrodes in the brain. Reality is a lie, and people are literally living it. Our society is not a simulation, but nonetheless, it's like the Matrix. Racism, sexism, classism, ableism, anti-Semitism, ageism, transphobia, homophobia, xenophobia, and I could go on, are part of this simulation that we live in. All of these things are man-made illusions called social constructs. Social constructs are just what they sound like, something we as a society have come to acknowledge as real, even if they may not be. Things like race, gender roles, stereotypes, marriage, adulthood, time, age, beauty, intelligence, social hierarchies, and pretty much everything we believe that's not physically tangible. These constructs help our society stay organized and structured, but they often negatively impact interactions between us because they often place us in oppressed positions in our socially constructed hierarchy. In an article published by Scientific American titled "Race is a Social Construct," by Megan Gannon, scientists argue that race is one of those things that our society clings to despite the fact that it has no real significance. Race doesn't make anyone better, more capable, or more intelligent, but somehow we've made it into this tremendously significant indicator of superiority. The same thing goes for gender. First, sex and gender are two different things. Sex is biological, and gender is itself and mental identity, not biology. Within our society, there is a binary for males and females. This binary, just like the racial caste system, negatively impacts some groups. Specifically with sex and gender, it's anyone who isn't a cisgender male. The problem with these hierarchies and social constructs is that they are ancient and no longer fit our ever-evolving and diverse world. Breasts are no longer indicative of gender identity, and race no longer means track star. And they never were very good at predicting traits, by the way. So how do we change these ancient and oppressive social norms? How do we adapt our social constructs to be more modern? The first step is acknowledging that the biases that these social constructs raise us with are false. Microaggressions based on race are pretty obvious to some, but to others not so much. But there is nothing wrong in not knowing. The right course of action when something isn't obvious is learning about it. We must educate people who have been raised with negative racial biases and are closed-minded about the issue. For example, the facts stand that race has no biological implications of anything. In fact, scientists say in the study of complete genomes from different parts of the world show that even between Africa and Europe, for example, there is not a single absolute genetic difference, meaning no single variant where all Africans have one variant and all Europeans have another. There are no genetic variations that are different between the two most segregated groups in the world, black and white, and yet we still have racism. We have to spread the word about the faulty assumptions that exist and permeate our minds from a young age about race. 64% of Americans agree that racism still exists in the US. And that acknowledgement is huge because that means even white people are acknowledging that racism is a huge issue in our country. But acknowledging racism isn't the same thing as acknowledging our own personal biases. And that is exactly what needs to be done if we want to end racism. When we see black people, we need to acknowledge the urge to hug our purses and walk faster and cross the street because those are negative biases that we have. When we see people speaking another language, we should acknowledge internally that the world has 6,500 languages and that English isn't the only one, or even the nicest one. Gender roles are another big social construct that we have to deconstruct. We have to educate the old, and especially the new generation, on the importance of accepting everyone no matter what. Feminism is often painted as this one-sided fight for women's rights, but that is false. Real feminism is all about the equality for both sexes and all genders. Most people think men don't suffer negative consequences as a result of sexism, but they do. We just happen to neglect them. We have men afraid to share their feelings, afraid to feel things besides anger, afraid to be anything other than manly. A psych student named Maria Power writes in her blog about the social construction of gender, and how when we are born, we come into the world and face a pink or blue reality. We teach girls to play with dolls and boys to play with fake guns. We buy girls plastic kitchens and teach them to be housewives and leave no room for them to think about anything else. We buy our boys plastic weapons and teach them to be angry and violent. We teach our children to go into the world with these binary interpretations of their roles in society and never think to ask them what they want to be or who they want to be. We have to encourage boys to be feminists because feminism isn't just women's rights. We have to encourage girls to stop perpetuating sexist realities onto our boys and teach boys to do the same with each other and with girls. We have to educate people on gender identity and about respecting people, and that means having patience. So let's teach others about their own biases, which means not getting angry when people say ignorant things. It means having patience. It means reflecting on our own perceptions of others. Ending social constructs like racism and sexism hasn't been an easy battle. But in the new age of technology and social media, all it takes is a positive tweet or a calm reply to something ignorant someone said on Facebook. Remember not to feed the trolls, and also that not everyone's mind can be changed.